Call this meeting to order actually at 8:59, if that's possible. Cheryl? Clerk, at least. Thank you. And I'm going to state that this electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All members are present, and I do confirm quorum. There are no members absent. We have today with us the full complement of staff, CAO, the clerk, and members of the senior management team and staff present. The agenda was posted, public input was invited at TML public comment at muskokalakes.ca. There were no comments received. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. For those committee members, motions today have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting. And regarding voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. I do want to acknowledge a supplementary agenda today. A supplementary agenda was issued yesterday pursuant to section 7.2.1 of Council Procedure Bylaw 2019-079 to add the following under new business. Item 10C 32. Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit Correspondence re COVID-19 framework. Quite a list back there. Item number 32. Point number 3, are there any disclosures I would ask committee of pecuniary interest at this time? Good, thank you. Seeing none, I'll proceed with our first delegation. So we have the fine folks from MPAC here with us, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Clerk, are they in the waiting room or ready to go with their presentation? I would imagine, well, yes. PowerPoint.
Yes, they're in the waiting room.
Good, thank you.
Cheryl Hollows is going to share the screen for the presentation, and Ann Haines is in the meeting.
Good, so I'd like to welcome Ann Haines, the account manager for MPAC, and it's an interesting one. This is her 2020 Municipal Partnership Report. COVID has had many impacts on us all, and this is one of them. So welcome, Ann. We certainly do welcome you and your messaging. So please proceed, and then I'm sure there'll be questions and comments from committee members. So please, thank you and welcome.
Okay, I thank you for the warm welcome, and glad to be here today with you from MPAC, bringing a little short update on our partnership report as mentioned. So you may recall the last time I saw all of you was just before the world changed as we know it with the global pandemic on February 4th, 2020. And we were anticipating the next province-wide assessment update, which did not occur. And so that has been paused. I'm assuming my presentation's been delivered and everyone has it because I can't share my screen. So I'm assuming that we're good there. So what you might want to be wondering is what is happening with the assessment updates. So we'll sort of start with that. And we don't know yet. That's the answer. We don't know yet when the next province-wide assessment update will be, or what the valuation date will be. But we'll certainly share that information with you as we hear and get direction from the province. In the meantime, we've been busy continuing to keep the data current, closely working with our municipal partners as well as property owners to capture any changes to data. reviewing permits and plans, conducting property inspections where it's safe to do so, and responding to inquiries from property owners who feel their assessment is inaccurate or maybe needs some making updates as needed. We're still monitoring the real estate market. It has been very interesting still being in COVID, but post the 2019 market that we were prepping for. And we're still engaging virtually mostly, but with our municipal, regional, and provincial partners throughout COVID. So the next screen or the next slide speaks to the property values and what we do know. So here's what we know. Values this year will continue in the January 1st, 2016 valuation date. That's the legislated date from the province. So that is continuing on. And the value of the property is a single point in time, what the property could reasonably be sold for in its state and condition at that point in time. So that's what we're doing. So anytime we make a change to a property now, if there's a new dwelling built in the community or an addition or a change, we then have to reflect the valuation date of January 1st, 2016. And then now I'll move into the partnership report. So in January, this was shared out with you, the partnership report. And even though, even before COVID, we do understand that, critical to keep in touch with our municipal partners, not just, with all municipalities across Ontario. And in those, with those relationships, with COVID, we want to maintain those and make sure we were staying connected. So the full report there's a link on that page, but I'm just going to give you some highlights today of that partnership report. So number one, we shifted our priorities because of the pause on the assessment update province-wide to meeting the needs of the municipalities. And we found new ways to access information that we needed. We were able to capture province-wide $37.3 billion in new assessment across Ontario. And in Muskoka Lakes, I'm proud to say we captured $109 million, even during COVID, of the $106 million forecast, which is 102% of the forecast. And we achieved picking up new assessment in Muskoka Lakes within 1 year of occupancy, 96% of the time. We did stay connected virtually. We attended many conferences. We had meetings. I know we had some new staff as well in 2020. So there was lots of dialogue there virtually and safely. And we've also transformed ways that we're going to share data with you. We've actually just recently built out a new platform internally. Municipal Connect has been rebooted and relaunched, and it's going to be launched in this area next week for your staff. And that Municipal Connect portal is a view or a lens into our data in our database. So next, we definitely want to keep a constant conversation going and in collaboration with our municipalities. We had mentioned we had to find new ways to adapt in COVID-19. So while many construction projects were ongoing, even during the shutdowns, we had to challenge ourselves to find new ways to gather information and get to that revenue and that new assessment timely. So we built a safe way for you to share information with us through that Municipal Connect portal, through the means of submitting digital building plans, to share them electronically with us, and then obviously our staff who were out in the field at times, depending on the color, based on the health unit's ruling, with proper PPE and safety precautions. They were also out picking new assessment up, but the digital plans was key. And then we had over 200 municipalities participating with that, and some who did not have the digital capability or weren't there yet, or we're just building that capacity. We actually also offered curbside pickup or to come into the municipal office with the safety precautions and following your precautions and our staff viewing those plans. So we were very pleased to say we did work with Muskoka Lakes in that capacity in COVID. So the restrictions right now, you know, in the area when we are in the gray lockdown, it's a complete pause on property inspections from our shop. When it's in the red, we can perform exterior inspections. So even though the offices are closed right now to the public, we're still very much active in the community, and we're going to keep continuing to look for ways to support digitization and electronic submission of documents back and forth. It's more efficient for you. It's quicker to turn around new assessment for the property owner, and you'll see that revenue generated much more quickly. So the next slide speaks to our role in the building permit process. So just as I mentioned, we rely on municipalities to send us the permits and the plans. And then from there, that turns into new assessment, which then turns into revenue for you to inform your decisions based on your budget and what you want within your communities. So we did work closely, as mentioned, with your CBO, and that was very successful in adding the new assessment. So lastly, I just wanted to highlight ways to stay connected with us. There's a map of the province and our website, and plug for, oops, sorry, I jumped ahead. I'm just going to have to go back. I will just say quickly, I want to put some numbers in here for you to look at. And this is your assessment base. So it has grown since 2020 into 2021. So that 10.4 billion of that 9.9 makes up your residential portfolio. And then you can see you've got some commercial, farm, industrial, and special and exempt in there. But the lion's share obviously is in the residential portfolio in Muskoka Lake. So you've got quite a nice asset there, an assessment base, and it is the largest in Muskoka. Okay, and sorry, then the last slide speaks to the zones and the connectivity through our monthly webinars, our In Touch newsletter that gets sent out as well. So currently, well, I should also let you know I've moved on to a new role in a new zone. So I'm originally from Zone 5 on the map in Muskoka Parry Sound, but now I'm the regional manager in all of Zone 1, which is in southwestern Ontario. So after 27 years of being in the area, I'm moving a little southwest. So I want to thank you for your partnership and your opportunities for working with you and your staff throughout those years. And I've certainly enjoyed it, and I will miss everyone, but I did commit to come to this because we don't have someone filling my shoes just yet. So I want to make sure that we were here for you today. And I've put on the last screen the information and contact details for Kaitlyn Potts, who may or may not be on the line. I can't see if she's on or not with me, and our regional manager in Zone 5, Rebecca Webb. So thanks again for the chance to speak, and I'd open it up to any questions at this time.
Good. Well, thank you, Ann, and it's always good to get a health, a financial health report that's very, very positive. And so thank you for that. Just for what it's worth, most people are moving up to Muskoka, not away from Muskoka. So you must have your reasons, Ann. So good luck to you in your endeavor. I would open this up to our committee, folks, and there's lots of hands up. So I'm just going to take these from the top. Councillor Haines.
Through you, good morning, Ann, and thank you very much for the update. The last time you were here, we talked about primary residences and the fact that people are moving up. How do they get that seasonal residence so that it reflects in the population numbers so that we now know it's a primary residence? I've got a couple of questions. Does this affect the assessment in any way when they change from secondary residence to primary residence? Okay. And does this affect the capital gains at all? If they indicate it's a primary residence here, but they're showing a primary is this where it shows up for capital gains?
I'm not familiar with capital gains, and so that's not really in my my specialty. So that's sort of under, I think, Canada Revenue, isn't it, with filing for income taxes and whatnot. So I have to steer out of that lane. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Okay, and my third question would be, how do we get people to let you know that they are now living here so that we can get an accurate population count for planning, for schools? And 2020 has really kind of kicked everybody into coming to Muskoka. So I'm just wondering how we can capitalize on that. Thank you.
Sure. There's a number of ways. On our website, mpac.ca, there's information specific to property owners. If they want to update their mailing address, that's one thing. So obviously when the mailing address and the civic address match, there's an assumption that they're a full-time resident, that's their primary residence. So they can get in touch through us with that change in the website. Or if they're not tech savvy and not into website changes, they can call our customer contact center. It's a toll-free number. And again, it's all that information is on our website. And we have brochures in your offices as well. I think they might still be there. I don't know if Cheryl or staff can confirm that, but our customer contact center phone number and all of that is on the back of every brochure. So if people aren't coming into your office at this time, they just should direct them to our website or call the CCC, the Customer Contact Center. So that's the best way for them to engage with us. Obviously, if they prefer mail, they can put it in writing and send it to us as well. So our office is located in Bravenhurst. And again, although it's not open and the mail is now being rerouted, we are still getting that mail scanned and back to us locally.
Supplementary,
Sure,
if
go
I
ahead.
could. We are a lot of rural addresses, and a lot of our addresses are, although they live in Muskoka Lakes, the property is in Muskoka Lakes, the address says Gravenhurst or Huntsville or Bracebridge. How is that handled by the assessment? Because you just said that mailing address, if your mailing address matches your civic address, then it's assumed that you're living there.
Yeah, so if it doesn't match and it's a PO box or a route number or something other than that can't tell, it is up to the property owner to let us know when they've made a change to permanent residency at that location. And we have a property code specifically for waterfront and non-waterfront that distinguishes, again, just for coding purposes, doesn't affect the value, but just to say they're year-round waterfront resident versus a seasonal.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Ann. Okay, I'm going to call on Councillor Bridgman and then the mayor.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Just more of a technical question, and Ann, good luck in your new position down south.
Thank you.
When you were talking about digital input, I'm assuming those 200 municipalities do all of their building permits online now?
Some do. Some do. And actually within COVID, many have moved to providers who can automatically digitize not only the permit process, but also plans for them at the same time. So we saw a lot of movement like throughout 2020. So that 200 number is cumulative throughout the year. In the beginning, it might have been smaller than that, but people quickly pivoted and moved to the digital world, just with the safety precautions and whatnot. So yes, some were already at that level and some of the bigger centers, and then some smaller ones that I know of, we worked with the various vendors and to make sure we can ingest that data. And they've added as we've gone through 2020. So it's a mix.
Thank you. Supplementary, and I don't know, Director Pink, if you can answer this. I'm curious, how much would it cost us to digitize our building department? Do we have any kind of a number on that?
Sorry, who are you asking?
Well, I think it's probably Director Pink, but okay, you know what? Whoever could answer it. How's that?
David, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Through the chair, I would, if you give me a moment, I can double check the budget that was just approved, but it was in the 10-year capital plan. We slated for 2023 to do this, although I want to get the building team on their feet after the recent changes, although this might be moved up to 2022, as I think it's a step that we need to undertake. My recollection, approximately $1 million in the budget, which would be utilized by the building reserve.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that. We'll call on the mayor, Mayor Harding.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ann, for your service to Muskoka Lakes for the past number of years. A couple of comments or questions. One to Councillor Haines regarding capital gains. My understanding, and Councillor Jagwas may be able to chime in just as a high level, if assuming your property has increased over 10 years of ownership, regardless of what property it is, let's say $100,000, and 5 years into your ownership, you bought a second property. So it's increased $100,000 or $10,000 a year. You have a second property. It will have increased accordingly, but you would be paying capital gains on theoretically, potentially 5 years of that ownership, or $50,000 is sort of the simple way to look at it. If you then flip to the new home for that capital gains exemption, the first half theoretically would be capital gains free, but the second half you would be paying tax on. So there's some decisions you need to make as to how long you keep one home or the second home and where you crystallize it, but talk to your accountant, I think, is the best way. And my comment's very specific. The province basically a year ago said we're not going to implement the new market value assessment. I think because of COVID, everyone's sort of worried about it. But I almost see a conflict, and I guess how we justify this, because we've said we're going to cap everybody in 2016, but as soon as you get a building permit in, as soon as you see somebody's properties changed, some properties are actually being reassessed and changed, and it's not right across the board. And I guess just trying to help me through that, if you will, how that justification is, and is that treating everybody equally?
Right. Thank you for that question. So just to clarify, because we're on a 4-year cycle, even before, when we were in the 2016, 2012 base, all the different base years that we've had as per legislation, we continually pick up and alter assessments, but they are backdated to that valuation date. So they're still being treated fairly. What has to occur is the data must be updated. So if somebody builds a new home, somebody puts on a large addition, somebody demolishes a structure, or removes apart something on their house that lowers their assessment, we have to make those changes in between those 4 years. So that's always been and has been consistent. Is to the question of is it fair? I would say that when you're creating your tax rates and you're looking at your budget, when everybody's assessed up to date and accurate with what's there, that's the sense of everybody's paying, whether you use the word fairly, based on what they are assessed at that point in time. When somebody's not paying for a change, everybody then is paying more, right? So the larger your assessment base grows, the more everybody shares the taxation. That's how it's a distribution mechanism. So I would say that picking up new assessment is important. We do perform that. We always have, even outside of the main assessment update year. But again, we have to then go back and backdate it to, if it were there back in Jan 1, 2016, this would be the value in the rate. So then they're being taxed on what they're using, what they're living in, what they have, compared to the similar properties and their neighbors in the vicinity. So that's my best explanation. Hopefully that makes sense.
I understand it. We do just, you may have heard about, and I know Director Donaldson and some of the ward B councillors are aware of a commercial property that had some building, has been reassessed considerably. And though financially, they really haven't changed. They built some new buildings, but in COVID times in particular, they're struggling financially, and there have been significant cost increases for them. That's all.
So yeah, and that is rare. I will say that. So when I spoke earlier that 90, I think I said 92% or 96% are picked up within a year, right. But for those remaining 4% or what have you, or 8%, yes, we do have the legislative trigger to go back 3 years. Our goal under the service level agreement is to pick up 85% of the time within a year of occupancy. So we do have a beacon or a goal that we try to hit so that we're not giving people 2 and 3 years worth. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I know in the case that you're stating, we were on the property multiple times with the owner, and they were fully aware of what we were going to be doing. So there was full disclosure there and openness and transparency, but it was a shock. Obviously, there was some sticker shock when the bill came in, and I get that. But at the end of the day, you know, we are doing our job and we have the legislation behind us to do it in those circumstances so you don't lose revenue.
Yep.
And that's our job.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. I'm going to call on Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Anne. And if I understood what you told us this morning, that our assessment is approximately 10 billion and it went up 109 million in for the taxation year 2021, I assume you're referring to. When I calculate that, that's about 1.05%. Yet when we did our budget, we were using a number of 0.7% for assessment growth. Was there some misunderstanding that I have there, or could you shed any light? Did our assessment that we will be using for the 2021 tax year go up by over 1%?
So your net change, which is different than the new assessment increase, because sometimes what goes up does come down when people challenge assessments, right? So if people challenge assessments and appeals and tribunals and whatnot, some of that stuff that went up, it comes down. So you net it out at 0.9%, almost 1%, from the 2020 year end to the 2021 assessment roll. So you went from 10.3 billion to 10.4. That within that 0.9 is the ups and all of the downs, if there were any, which there probably was. So I hope that clarifies some of the difference.
Thank you. Maybe Director Donaldson would just like to take a look at that, because I believe we used up a 0.7. And anyway, thank you.
We did. Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
I will clarify one point, that 0.7 was for residential, which is the majority of your base. The 0.9 is a net overall of all classes. So that might help. Sorry.
Great. That solves it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. And I'm seeing no other comments. I might just add, and I did see one of your communications where Township Muskoka Lakes, 109 million, I believe, enhanced valuation this year, second only to Blue Mountain. Could you comment, with your 27 years of experience, can you tell us how we're performing as that group of 444 municipalities?
Sure. So yes, there was some active posts on Twitter with the top 10. You made it in a few categories, Muskoka Lakes. And I can say, from being in this area for like 27 years, you've always been sort of number one as far as growth and permits and activity. So I can't compare you to all 444 municipalities, but I did sort of allude to the fact that you are the highest assessment base in Muskoka, and it has been booming since I moved to the area, and it hasn't stopped. It just keeps going up. There might be pockets in years where there's, you know, a dip, but it's just continuing to grow. So I would say you're certainly in the top 5 for you know, small, like for the waterfront markets, for sure, of the waterfront municipalities.
Good, thank you. Great words. So listen, we want to wish you all the best. Thank you very much for being with us today. I see no other comments. We don't have a vase, a chrome vase for you to take away for your fireplace, but we do wish you all the best, and thank you. And nice to know that you're still here for us while the transition.
No problem. And if you have any friends in Southwest Ontario, just put in a good word.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, committee. With that, we're going to move to item 5A, which is a Public Works perspective. We're going to have a presentation from our Director of Financial Services, Mark Donaldson, and Ken Becking, our Director of Public Works, relating to the Community Infrastructure Roadmap, and that presentation will be coming up on your screen. So With that, I would pass the floor to those fine gentlemen.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to start us off this morning, and good morning all. So this presentation was prepared by the strategic leadership team in response to committee's interest in better understanding the nature and extent of the township's infrastructure, as well as our capital budget and forecast, and making sure that it's realistic and that we have a sustainable funding plan. So establishing a roadmap to achieve that goal will require a team approach or a team effort. And when we talk about team, we mean our council staff team. So as you alluded, Mr. Becking and Mr. Donaldson and I will be taking you through the presentation, which is intended to provide committee with a high-level overview of how we envision building and refining or evolving that roadmap. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Becking, who will take us through the next couple of slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Ken.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Infrastructure is the foundation on which we base and build our community. Municipalities are required to develop an asset management plan according to the Ontario Regulation 588-17. The regulation identifies two categories of assets: core or primary assets and other or secondary assets. In the case of the township, roads and bridges represent the primary assets of the corporation. And these assets have an estimated replacement value of something in the order of $350 million. Our secondary assets are such things as buildings, equipment, some of our digital resources and so forth. And based on current estimates, these assets represent about 100 million. According to the latest version of the Capital Works forecast, we currently have approximately $77 million worth of needs within those assets, split roughly 57 million in terms of our primary assets and 20 million in terms of our secondary assets. Next slide, please. Asset management, in its essence, is about putting the right dollars into the right treatment at the right time in order to maximize the value and minimize the life cycle costs. It's about looking after what we have. It is not about new assets and new investments into our infrastructure. The objective is essentially one of providing an appropriate level of service to the public at the least cost to the taxpayer. Next slide. And I'll now turn it over to Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of committee. So during the budget deliberations, Council approved a $3.5 million contribution to reserves in 2021 toward funding the 10-year capital forecast. It was noted during those discussions that additional investment would be needed based on the current expected cost of rehabilitation or replacement of township assets. Again, this chart shows that discretionary reserves would be fully depleted by 2027 if future budgets assumed the same level of reserve contributions and there was no increase in the 10-year capital requirements. Based on the current identified need for investment over the next 10 years, staff have estimated that the level of contribution to reserves to fully fund the 10-year capital plan in its current form would require at least an increase of $350,000 per year, increasing to an annual contribution of $7 million by 2030. Next slide. There are two main variables which impact the cost of future capital: quantity and quality. With respect to quantity, there are elements of the current asset inventory that are considered fixed and those that are not. Roads and bridges are considered fixed insofar as they cannot be reduced. Secondary assets, such as building facilities, are variable with respect to the fact that the number of sites can be altered. The number of assets that the township owns and maintains has a direct impact on the cost of asset renewal in the future. Related to quality, the level of service that is determined to be required will also drive cost. That range of service level can vary between legislated minimums, which would be a floor, to exceptional service, which would be a ceiling. The level of service established by council should balance the service need and the community demand. Consideration must also be given to ongoing operating maintenance costs when setting levels of service. Once determined, the financing plan for the future capital plan can then be established, balancing the burden on current taxpayers for future capital requirements through annual increases to the general levy versus financing through debt and raising repayment over the asset service life is also a matter for council's future discussion. As we progress through the next year, new information will help to guide the pros and cons of these options during those discussions. I'll turn it over to CAO Haines.
Thanks, Mr. Donaldson. So this last slide is really intended to identify where a possible report, as Mark alluded to, information study will be provided to committee and council, and there'll be an associated decision point. So each of those studies, reports, and decision points will allow us to refine the roadmap with a view to achieving our goal of ensuring that we have a financially sustainable level of infrastructure that best services the community. Having said that, Mr. Chair, staff would be happy to answer any questions of committee on this.
Well, thank you. Committee, I'm going to open it up to you all as you see the roadmap in front of you. Perhaps, though, before I do, I wonder, CAO Hammond, this roadmap, and it certainly deals with 2022, well, mainly. Are we comfortable with the extrapolation? Is this really a 10-year plan and these are the first 2 or 3 years of it? Or do you see it very much being a beginning and an end piece?
I think, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the essence of the roadmap is essentially that it's laying out the plan or the strategy. I think council over the course of the next year will be making foundational decisions to guide the municipality forward, and future councils will need to build on or refine as they see fit some of those decisions, plans, strategies that we're putting forward. But I think we all know the goal is to ensure that we've got the right level of infrastructure at the right locations to best service the community.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to ask committee comments, thoughts. Very inclusive report. I'm not seeing, and there is a Councillor Bridgman. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz. Just a question for whoever wants to answer it. It looks to me like you're asking for a decision point in Q4 of 2021 in terms of our financial policy. Is that debt to non-debt financing? Is that what that is referring to?
Mr. Chair, I'll let Mr. Donaldson sort of speak to that.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Bridgman, so in terms of the question, I think what we're trying to establish with a capital policy is really to establish a framework that will guide how we will fund capital in the future. I don't think it will be specific to the debt versus levy discussion per se, but it will just basically be a policy that outlines, that there will be requirements to fund capital as we go forward, and that there needs to be a plan that is in place that will help to guide those decisions in the future and ensure that the money is available when needed to make those infrastructure investments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes, and then Councillor Roberts.
Through you to whoever would like to answer this. Your roadmap shows taxation being the levy and debt. Where are the provincial grants rolled into this? Money that we get from the province or specific assets that we improve? gas tax rebate, things like that. Where is that included in this evaluation?
Mr. Chair, I think that's another question for Mr. Donaldson.
Good. Thank you, Chair and Councillor Haines. So it's not specifically mentioned here. I think that our level of grant funding for capital is relatively small to the overall requirement that we have. And as grants can be subject to some policy decisions at the provincial level, we certainly would take advantage and be opportunistic for ways in which we could leverage those grants. But I do think the true major contributors for the majority of the capital infrastructure spend is going to be dependent upon either debt servicing or general levy contributions to reserves to try to fund the requirements for the township going forward. But absolutely, the grants do form part of it, and they certainly would be included to every opportunity that we could going forward.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I want to compliment the senior staff for this excellent presentation that gives more insight into the hard decisions that this council is going to have to make in 2021 and 2022. I know that in 2018, many of us, when we were running and campaigning, were questioning the budget. And what the staff have done is sort of have building blocks that shows that that now has formalized our issue, said, here's our plan to gather information so that we can make informed, hard decisions on what needs to be done so we can right the ship as it pertains to our capital budget. And I want to thank senior staff for that guidance and their great presentation.
Good, thank you. Planning your work and working the plan. Councillor Jagwoods. Sorry,
thank you, Chair. I just wanted to expand on something that Director Donaldson mentioned briefly, in that two methods of funding, one taxation and the other debt. Actually, there's only one method of financing, and that's taxation. Debt is merely putting off the taxation. If you borrow $1 million, you have to repay the $1 million in the future. So once you get 10 or 20 years down a debt program, your debt payments then eat into the money you have available. So there's only one taxpayer. So I think we just have to remember that. I'm not saying I'm opposed to debt, but that is usually a more expensive way and is used when you have a need that must be filled and you don't have the money. But I think ultimately the taxpayer is paying the full burden. And I believe Director Donaldson did mention that, but just briefly. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, I see no other comments. I just want to acknowledge again, community infrastructure roadmap. Yes, we need a vision forward, and I think Councillor Roberts said it well when he said, the vision for the future. We have some tough decisions to make, and we'll make them together. So thank you very much to our senior leadership team for bringing that report forward. Seeing no other questions, or comments, we're going to move on to item 5B now, which is an update from our Director of Public Works, Ken Becking, on the 2021 winter and spring water level situation. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, current conditions within the watershed, all of the lakes at this point at least are for the most part frozen, with approximately 20 to 30 centimeters of solid ice. I know that the ice coverage is thicker in locations and has seams in it, but that's the best estimate I have at the time. The ground for the most part is not frozen to any significant degree. Snow accumulations within the watershed range from about 120 to 170% of what would be considered normal levels for this time of the year. The long-range weather forecasts are predicting above average temperatures and average precipitation for the months of March, April, and May. Water levels as at March 1st were at or slightly below the target levels for this time of the year, with the exception of Lake Muskoka, which is currently sitting near the lower limit of the normal operating zone. Forecasted weather conditions for the coming week are for mild temperatures with approximately 10 to 15 millimeters of rain. Based on the information that I've alluded to, most of the additional precipitation that we can expect in the short term will likely be absorbed into the snowpack, and there may be some localized ponding, but I don't see any significant amount of runoff. The amount of snow in the upper reaches of the watershed are cause for concern. The potential for flooding will depend on a combination of circumstance of high temperatures in combination with excessive amounts of rain. Whether or not this will occur cannot be predicted at this time with any certainty. In terms of my recommendations at this time, staff are recommending that we continue to monitor conditions as they evolve, and staff within the department have been instructed to make sure that we have sandbags and sandbag materials close to hand should they be required. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Good, thank you very much. Very detailed report. I know that I'm just going to move a little forward here. I know item 10C29, which is the Minister of Natural Resources on your agenda, correspondence to and from the mayors of the township and of the townships and the cities, towns, but certainly our mayor, Harding. I wonder, would we just leave at this point, this thought for now, and come back to it when we review those? Or Mayor Harding, would you like a forum here and now to speak to any facet of that? I'll leave that up to you.
I'm happy to have the discussion now. Happy to do it at 10, whatever. I'll defer to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no comments, then I think perhaps what we'll do is we'll stay to the agenda and we'll talk to you again in a few moments. So thank you for that, Director Becking. And I guess the only other thought might be, will there be some sort of a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly report? One would imagine at minimum coming back to General Finance in April with a similar type report, a status update, if you will. Is there any intent by us to communicate to the public on more of an ongoing basis through social media what one might expect or what the current conditions are? Has there been discussion of that inside the senior leadership team? So I could direct that to you, Director Becking, I suppose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is at the discretion of the committee. If committee would like regular weekly and or monthly updates, I'm happy to do so. It's entirely at your discretion.
Good, thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, just to pick up on your last thought about communication. The only reason that I think we might consider a communication is the fact that there are other municipalities and the region communicating what looked like a fairly dire warning. I mean, just to take it at face value. I've seen it on the Bracebridge website. I've seen it on the Muskoka region.com. It's not alarmist, but, start preparing for flooding, put everything up high. And it leaks through the entire district. It leaves people wondering, how one end of the lake can be flooding and the other not. We either just leave it lie and deal with the consequence of people phoning in and asking, what are we supposed to do? Or we get proactive and get out there with the message. The problem I have is, as Director Becking correctly pointed out, there's no certainty to this, and we're a long way from certainty at this point in the whole cycle. It's nothing more than best guess and estimate based on what happened last year and the last 5 years. So I don't know what we would communicate, but I really don't like the fact that the only communication out there on social media right now is borders on alarmist, if you ask me.
Good,
That's
thank
it.
you. Thank you. And I see the mayor has his hand up. Mayor Hardy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I guess to Councillor Kelly. My recommendation at this point is not to put anything out there to the public. We are in different areas, and it's Bracebridge has certain low-lying areas that 4 inches of water rise is going to cause them to flood. There's no question. That's why the flooding and the devastation in Bracebridge was so severe 2 years ago. Huntsville, in particular, also will flood. They need to, as such, prepare based on the amounts of snow that are on the ground. Their water bodies could be drained to zero, and there's still not enough water body to absorb the snow mass that's going to hit that. Just as a perspective quickly, and Director Becking alluded to this, that we are at the lower end of the normal operating zone. We're about 4.5 inches lower at this time on Lake Muskoka than we were last year. That's significant on the size of body of water that Lake Muskoka is. Am I going to go on record at this point and say today we're not going to flood? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not stupid. Excuse me, some might argue. But no laughing. But the reality is, every week there is an update. Every 2 weeks, the MNRF have a communications team with the mayors and directors of public works across our watershed that are advising what is changing. And there are triggers, there are events that happen on the 1st of March, the 15th of March, the 30th of March. So there's ongoing evaluation of what's happening. My best guess at this point, we're going to be okay. I can tell you that right now.
Good, thank you, Mayor. And I see our CEO has his hand. Mr. Hammond?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to assist with committee's clarity on this matter, in those situations elsewhere, so for example, in Huntsville and Bracebridge, my understanding is that localized flooding that the mayor referred to tends to be in river situations, in a riverine context versus a lake context. So that may assist you with your understanding of why you're seeing certain communications from other municipalities. There are places in riverine situations which regularly flood with a minimal amount of water. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I know, as being in Bala Bay, and I can look outside and see that the water is, to what the mayor has said, certainly down to a what looks to be a very manageable level for this time of year. Both the north and the south dams are essentially moving no water. So there is an incredible amount of capacity to push a lot of water over and down into the Moon River. So, quite honestly, I too feel like we're in a spot very cautiously optimistic. So let's see what happens from there. And thank you for that report, Mr. Becking. I'm going to move on now, seeing no other hands. I'm going to move on to item 6A, which is a report from the clerk regarding a proposed license agreement, Hogarth Roll 4-19-066.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the report. The applicant has applied for a driveway access to his property through his neighbor's property, which is Hochter Duncan. We entered into an agreement with Hochter Duncan and Township of Seguin a couple of years ago for the same circumstances. The requirement for a license agreement and the requirement for a shared road use agreement between Hogarth the Township of Muskoka Lakes and the Township of Seguin are requirements of the Township of Muskoka Lakes conditions of consent, which was approved recently, and the actual shared use agreement is a condition of consent with the Township of Seguin, which expires in June. So that's why we are here today to give tentative approval and then proceed with the license agreement over the next few months. But next council, we would recommend to pass the bylaw for the shared use agreement to meet the conditions of consent in the Seguin Township.
Good, thank you, Clerk. Committee, any comments, thoughts? I see none. Okay, given that, I'm going to read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Hayes has a question. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the hand. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hayes.
I'm just wondering, this is probably going to come up in the future. And is this how we normally handle people that are using our concession as a driveway to access their cottages?
The conditions are conditions of consent. So I would actually, I believe the one agreement for the shared use is because it's a multi jurisdiction road allowance. So it is one template, which we have done 2 years ago. We have been actually starting to enter into license agreements for driveways over unopened road allowances. Maybe Mr. Becking wants to speak more to that, but we propose that no license agreement fees are charged on an annual basis. We just want to ensure it's constructed properly and where it is supposed to be constructed, and that there's no environmental impacts with the ever-changing increased legislation on properties within municipalities. So I'm not sure if that answers or makes it more confusing.
Okay, she's nodding her head. Yes, good. Thank you. Sorry, any other questions? Councillor Jaglowitz, here we are. Go ahead, sir.
Actually, it's just a follow-up question to that same subject. Is it the intention that where roads are going on unopened road allowances, that these agreements will be required for existing situations, or is this just an exception?
Clerk, or just?
I can answer this specifically. Are conditions of consent that were imposed on the property owners. So that is why these applications are before us, but I would defer that question perhaps to the Director of Public Works for, I mean, I can't imagine that we would go out and look for encroachments everywhere, but when things come to our attention, we deal with it, as you know, when we find structures. But I would defer some of those questions to the director.
Director Becking, would you like a comment?
It certainly would be my advice that any new situation should be appropriately documented and made legal. Going back and retroactively trying to address 100 years of history, I don't think is going to be terribly fruitful.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands or comments, I will read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the application for a license agreement to construct and maintain a driveway on an original road allowance lying between lots 15 and 16, concession 14, Medora, submitted by Jeffrey Hunter Hogarth, roll number 4-19-066, be approved in accordance with Township Council Policy C-LS-07, subject to the following conditions. That an environmental site inspection report be prepared and submitted to the township, and all works identified in the assessment be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. That a draft survey be prepared and provided to the township for review prior to registration. That no annual fee be required, as the license agreement is for a driveway. And that once the above conditions have been fulfilled, the bylaw shall be passed at a future council meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute any documents required for the license agreement. So I'll ask all those in favor. Okay, Cheryl? Good. That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so I will read a second resolution here, moved by Councilor Nishikawa, seconded by Councilor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-15 be passed at the April 14, 2021 council meeting to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a shared road use agreement over the joint jurisdiction original road allowance lying between lot 16 Medora in the Township of Muskoka Lakes and lot 20 Humphrey in the Township of Seguin, with Jeffrey Hunter Hogarth, roll number 4-19-066. All those in favor? Okay, Cheryl. Good, thank you.
That was carried unanimously.
Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, item 6B. Thank you for that, Cheryl. Item 6B is a report from our Director of Financial Services, a financial update for the preliminary for the year ending December 31, 2020. So, Mr. Donaldson, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Chair. As part of staff's commitment to regular quarterly reporting, a report outlining the preliminary year-end operating surplus for the township has been presented to committee today. These results, showing an operating surplus of $324,820, is still subject to final review and audit and is not yet final. Not unexpectedly, non-tax or user fee revenue is lower than budget last year. Closure of facilities, in particular arenas, had a negative effect on revenue. Impact was also as a result of lower interest earned on bank holdings as a result of the reduction in the bank prime rates earlier in 2020, and the receipt of fewer planning applications in the year. However, building activities were higher than expected, which resulted in higher permit revenues. As well, a portion of the Safe Restart COVID operating grant to cover incremental expenses has also been included in this report. On the expense side, expenses were also lower than budget. Savings on staff costs due to vacancies and cancellation of some conferences and training events due to COVID contributed, as did the need for reduced legal and consulting services in the year. Savings were also realized as the province lowered electricity rates during the year, which lowered our utility consumption or payment for consumption. But extraordinary incremental COVID-19 expenses reported in this report total $175,800 to December 31st. On the capital side, a number of items planned for 2020 were deferred, while some were completed for less than budgeted. The Windermere Fire Pumper has been ordered, but has not been captured in this report as it's not yet been delivered. So funds will be allocated from the reserve to cover this cost upon delivery. It's expected that capital spending was lower than planned, while all contributions to reserves in 2020 were recorded, that ending reserve balances will be higher than forecasted in the 2020 budget that will be used later to fund capital expenses. Overall, despite being an unprecedented year, staff were able to manage operating costs within allocation and result a small surplus. The audit is scheduled for early April, and I anticipate reporting back to committee with final audited results in early summer. And the next quarterly report, which will be for Q1 of 2021, will come forward to committee in May. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Good, thank you, sir. I'm going to ask committee now to any comments or thoughts on the report. Is there anything you've noticed? There's a hand up, Councilor Roberts. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Donaldson. Thank you very much for this report. Well, the question I have is more pertaining to the financial reports for 2021. Here it is in March. We're receiving this report. What does the Treasury Department require so that we could to obtain the financials for 2021 at the end of December 2021 or in the first month of 2022 is my question. Do you need more staff, better applications? How can we achieve that?
Thank you, and Chair, to respond to the questions. So there's a cutoff period that takes place at every quarter. So for the period ended March 31st, we would close off the month sometime in mid-April. That would give opportunity to capture all of the expenses that would be in that quarter. Unfortunately, that doesn't give us time to bring a report forward for the meeting that's immediately after the end of the quarter. So it takes us to the following. So March would come in May, June would come in August, September would come in November, and December would typically come in February. However, general finance was canceled this year in February. So I'm bringing this report forward today. So I don't know that there would be any procedural issues that would allow us to expedite reporting. It's just a matter of our month-end close process or quarter-end close process that takes a couple of weeks to get all of our invoices and payrolls, accruals, everything posted so that we can prepare a report that is complete and bring forward to committee. And that takes approximately a month to do. So we bring it to the report that the next scheduled meeting after that period has closed.
Good. Thank you. I see no other questions. If I may, I just have one thought under non-tax revenues, 024100, which is under protective inspection. Actual was 163, budget was 141, so we're over budget by $221,000. Can you explain that? Just, it's the only one that pops out.
I'm sorry, Chair, could you repeat that again for me, please?
Sorry, 024100 account, which is identified as protective inspection. 024100, I believe it's under likely fire, one might think, where it's $221,000 over.
Yes, so sorry, so the title protective inspection is commonly referred to as building. So that's the official name for it, but that is the building department. And as I had referenced, permits were quite high in 2020, much higher than what were expected. So we had a lot of, we had extra permit revenue from the building department. So protective inspection is building.
Good, thank you, very good. Excellent. Okay, committee, I see no hands. So we're going to receive this report for informational purposes. Thank you very much, Director Donaldson, and we'll move on from there. So thank you. I'm going to move into item 7A, the minutes of the Public Library Board for both December and January, December 15th and January 12th. We'll accept those into the public record. Thank you for your effort. 7B, minutes of the Parks and Trails Committee meeting held on November 23rd. We'll accept those minutes into the public as well. Are there any comments on that from anyone?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sorry?
I believe Councillor Haines wanted to speak to the previous item.
Good, thank you. Councillor Haines, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, I just wanted to let committee know that we had our board meeting for the library yesterday, and the counts for books going out in February with curbside only were almost 1,200. And just so that you know, they are doing Zoom programming, and we had over 200 adults and children attend this programming. So that's just kind of a feather in our cap for our library. They still are up, they are still going strong, and that does not include any of the electronic resources that are being utilized as well. Okay, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Well, thank you. Great news, great information, and public is hearing that, and lots of support at the library. That's great. in these trying times. Parks and Trails. We have the minutes here, we're accepting the minutes for the November meeting. I would ask anyone at Parks and Trails if there's any commentary, that's fine. Councillor Haines, your hand is still up. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item 7C, which is a report from our Fire Chief, Ryan Morrell, regarding the closure of the Ontario Fire College Gravenhurst campus. And I'm going to invite you to come on the screen. There you are. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Chair Zavitz and committee. What committee has before them today, through you, is a report that follows the council agenda of February the 10th, where 2 items of correspondence under the other business were received, one from the OPSU Local 3117 and the Township of Baldwin. You'll also note, committee, that on today's meeting agenda, you'll see 7 other municipalities: the Township of Hawick, the Township of the Archipelago, the Town of Mono, the Township of Strong, the City of Port Colborne, and the Township of Tiny, and the Township of Perry have also referenced this same subject, as well as a letter from the Save the Ontario Fire College. What committee has before them is a report that provides an overview of the announcement of the province to modernize firefighter training in the province of Ontario. And predominantly what we will draw your attention to, staff will draw your attention to today, is the plan to permanently shut down the Ontario Fire College campus located in Gravenhurst. On January 13th, the Office of the Fire Marshal announced that the Gravenhurst campus of the Ontario Fire College will be closing effective March 31st, and further that the province will be modernizing firefighter training. Most fire departments in Ontario are operated and funded by municipalities. Since 1949, the provincial government through the OFM has been providing and subsidizing firefighter training at the Ontario Fire College Gravenhurst campus. The OFC's primary responsibility is to develop and deliver academically sound educational training programs to meet the needs of the fire service. The decision to close the OFC campus appears to be irreversible at this time, and the date is aligned with the end of the provincial fiscal year. Again, that's March 31st. And while the closing of the Fire College campus in Gravenhurst is a loss of accessible, available, and consistent standardized training for Ontario's fire service, it also has an economic loss to the Muskoka community. While the announcement also speaks to modernization of training, a fulsome and detailed framework and plan, we believe, must be developed with input from all the stakeholders, including municipalities. Modernization of training for the fire service should be based on an equitable and a sustainable model with principles that include affordability, accessibility, and autonomy. It should result in a program that has a standardized curriculum with testing and oversight that meets the needs of all department sizes and types in the province of Ontario, which is unique. It is noted that the province currently provides grants to the police service to address both local and provincial community safety priorities through the Community Safety Grants program. At this time, there is no similar program for the fire service. The Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, which is an association that we are members of, has requested that any financial resources from the closure of this college be redirected to stay within the Ontario Fire Service. This funding should also be used to create a grant or a subsidy similar to that used by the police service in Ontario. In conclusion, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to training for the fire service based on an individual department size, resources, or needs. In developing a long-term plan, we believe that all stakeholders should be involved, and we shall have an autonomy and authority to train and test our own fire service personnel to the levels of service that we provide within our own municipalities. I will draw committee's attention to a chart that we've created that can illustrate the significantly increased costs per course. And I will also ask at this time that committee review the recommendation that council express concern with the closure of the Ontario Fire College may result in training that is not financially sustainable for this township. Council also expressed their support for the Town of Gravenhurst Committee of the Whole resolution respecting the closure of the Ontario Fire College insofar as it will result in job losses and would be a detriment to the broader community. And further, that modernization efforts to improve the fire service training must result in a program that is affordable accessible, and meet the needs of all department sizes and types in the province of Ontario. I stand for questions.
Good, thank you. And I do have asking Councillor Kelly for his commentary. We do have a resolution in front of us to support that recommendation as laid out by Chief Morrell. So I'll pass the dais over to Councillor Kelly for comment.
Thank you, and through you, great report there. Thank you, Chief. I have 2 or 3 questions. Just let me throw them out, and then I'll just sit back and listen to the answer. But number one, is this the only campus or the only location for the Fire College of Ontario, or are there others? I think there used to be one, or maybe there still is at the airport, or maybe it's specific for airport training. I don't know, at Pearson Airport. Number 2, did this have some history behind it? The buildings and facilities and deterioration, or I mean, was this an obvious decision or just kind of right out of the blue? And I guess the third one is more a comment than a question. It seems like an awfully random priority given the circumstances and given the focus that I hope the Premier and the Cabinet have on bigger matters, like getting needles into everybody's arm. This just seems like kind of a strange thing to pull out of the middle of nowhere. And so I'm kind of wondering whether there's been warning, whether there's been previous discussion that I missed, because this just seems a little bit random. Thank you.
Chief, would you like to comment?
Through you, Chair Zavitz, to committee. The first question, is this the only site? This is the only campus at this time for the Ontario Fire College. And it actually references in the Act that they shall have, the Fire Marshal shall provide a centrally located fire college. So at this time, that question was asked amongst many meetings that we've had for the Ontario Fire Service. We have asked that question, and the response that we were given was quite alarming, but it can be done. The Fire Marshal himself said, the Act can be opened up and changed. So to answer that question, this is the only site. To your second question, within that same question, the Mississauga location that you're seeing when you're driving to the airport is in fact the Mississauga training facility. It is for the Mississauga Fire and Emergency Services. You'll see a very similar facility in Oakville and a similar facility on the backside of Pearson when you're landing. It looks like an aircraft that has been burned. That's for their Pearson Fire Department, Pearson International Fire Service to work with. Number 2, history. There's actually a monument on the property, and there are a few buildings, structures that I understand are of heritage value. I understand that the town of Gravenhurst is asking about those buildings. One said such building is when you first drive into the property and you see the sign that says the Ontario Fire College, immediately behind it there's a large white building with large windows. That is a heritage building that I believe people are working on preserving at this time. Behind that building, there's actually a monument that is dedicated to the Ontario Fire Service and fallen firefighters on behalf of one of the associations. I believe it's the Firefighters of Ontario Association. There is a plan to either relocate that monument or give it access after the site has been redeployed. And second to that, we have heard anecdotally through other meetings that there is an actual plan for the site moving forward, and it might not be as obvious as what some people think. It may in fact not be completely for sale like some people think, although the land there is worth a lot of money. I have heard anecdotally that the site may be used to train corrections officers or perhaps PSWs moving forward for some of the plans for the Ontario government. The third thing that was brought to my attention, or in your questioning, sorry, excuse me for this. Just gonna have to ignore that for a second. The random nature of this decision. Dealing with enrollment was an issue for the college. They were dealing with declining enrollment from the fire service. Use of the college property has been declining, and people have canceled courses in the past. And I think it was because people took it for granted that the college was always going to be there. For us in Muskoka, that actually worked in our favor. For a lot of the fire services in this area, we were on the wait list for a lot of courses. We were able to achieve a lot of course load because we were able to squeeze into those spots when they became available. So for us in Muskoka, this is actually a bigger impact because there is no RTC that has been replaced within this area.
Right.
We're currently in process to get an RTC approved for this area, which will hopefully relieve some of that burden. But that is one of the bigger challenges moving forward. Hopefully I've answered most of your question through you.
RTC would, thank you, Chief. RTC would be a regional training center? one might
Yes.
think? Right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And I would share that I know Waterloo, so the regional municipality of Waterloo has built a mammoth new center, to your point. So are we hearing that there's one in Oakville, there's one in Mississauga, there's one in Waterloo, and is this a decentralization? Is this the government's intent? Can you speak to that? Yeah,
without alluding too much, because we're in the process of getting an RTC approved in Huntsville at this time. We've heard a lot of some of the balance of the report that I've given you in front of you. The price tag that's in there will still remain the same. It will be roughly $1,500 to train a firefighter recruit, versus the old cost of $65 times 3. Yes, there is a movement of front to move forward with a Muskoka training facility in the Huntsville area. And to your point, this is a decentralization, which actually has some benefit, moving towards 20 RTCs out in the field. And I will note that like we note in the report, it does seem that this decision is irreversible at this time. But that said, I think it would be important for this committee and council to support our neighbors and to support the fact that we do recognize there will be an increase in funding for training for our own municipality.
Thank you for that. I see Councilor Nishikawa has her hand up, but she's not there. Councilor Nishikawa, you? Okay, I'm going to call on Councilor Edwards while we await Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you very much. This resolution that we're passing, does it have to go to council? And if it does, I think and that because it's closing at the end of the month, it should come up this afternoon. Because this is definitely something that we should be looking into right away and let the province know. And that if I look at the chart that you have, like a fire one on that from $65 going up to 1,200. Where's that? The province obviously aren't going to be funding that. Are they downloading all this to us? Thank you.
Thank you. I would defer to the clerk on the question from Councilor Edwards. I know this resolution that I have in front of me speaks to recommending council express concern over the closure, but that would, as I understand it, would be in the next cycle for next month. So, clerk, is there an urgency based on the March closure piece? I mean, that it kind of begs a question. Did someone speak to that?
Well, I could speak with respect to the normal procedure. Any action items from this meeting today would go to the April council meeting for approval. I'm not aware of the timing concerns with regard to this matter, so the fire chief would have to speak to that.
I see. Okay, thank you, clerk. I see the CEO has his hand up. Derek.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think if committee so desired, the letter could be sent to the province. A letter could be sent to the province with the resolution attached, indicating that it's pending council approval. Should committee wish to do that.
Good, thank you. Chief Merrill, we have anything to add to that? Or?
Okay. Yes, through you, Chair Zavitz. I believe that Councillor Edwards asked a second part to his question. I can't remember what it was. Sorry about that.
Okay, Councillor.
Yes, I was asking about the downloading of costs, and that, like in your chart there, it says firefighter one, right. $65, where the RTC fee would be 1,200. Who picks up that fee? Would it be the municipality or the province?
Through you, Chair Zavitz, to committee, yes, it would be us that picks up that fee, and we've heard that amount will actually be more in line with 1,200 plus 500 equals 1,700 in that chart, but it will actually be more like 1,500, even if we go with a partnership model in the RTC.
That's
Okay.
supplemental. I think not only should we let the province know about this, should be letting our taxpayers know. That's another major download onto the taxpayer. And that, and you know, I think it's wrong. I think it's premature. I don't know how long the fire chief has known about this, but I think it's only been about 2 or 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, and that they've come up with this. So it's very, very premature, and I think we should be really making our voices heard on this. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa, you did have your hand up, sorry. Oh, you're good? Okay, thank you. So I think as per what our CAO has just said, I mean, if this resolution, when I read it, and if it does get passed, then if we could send that along with a covering letter with dispatch, then it would certainly get into the mix sooner than later with our wishes known and in support of our neighbor. So I sort of have an agreement with that. The mayor has a comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I agree with that. I think the other thing we can do is I can send a letter on behalf of the municipality, also expressing concern about downloading costs as well, to Councillor Edwards' perspective. So with the pending resolution, and we can get that out hopefully by the end of the week.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think that's what that's the spirit of this discussion. Though Cheryl has her hand, or clerk has her hand up. Go ahead.
If I could just interrupt, if it is of a matter of urgency, we could add the enactment of this specific motion to council this afternoon, if you so wish.
I'm seeing a lot of
Just
yes.
amend the motion.
Yes, I'm seeing that. Very good, very good. Everyone is in agreement with that. So Cheryl, what would I do with this resolution? Is there any changes to the wording in this resolution?
No.
Good. Okay, thank you. Well, with that, great discussion. Thank you, committee. I'm going to moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Haines. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend that Township Council express concern that the closure of the Ontario Fire College may result in training that is not financially sustainable for the Township of Muskoka Lakes, and that Township Council express their support for the Town of Gravenhurst Committee of the whole resolution respecting the closure of the Ontario Fire College insofar as it will result in job losses and would be a detriment to the broader community. And further, that modernization efforts to improve fire service training must result in a program that is affordable, accessible, and meets the needs of all department sizes and types in the province of Ontario. All those in favor of that resolution? Good, thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing that this afternoon and dealing with that further. Thank you, Chief. Matter of fact, 7D, we have Fire Chief Morrell still on the hot seat. Report from the Fire Chief regarding emergency public alerting system. So Ryan, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Zavitz and committee. The report before you deals with a matter that has been put before council a few times. As committee will recall, staff brought a report to committee. They evaluated the options to provide a proactive communication to the public ahead of and during an emergency to give ongoing communications. Council had authorized requisite funds for this initiative, a part of its approval in the 2020 operating budget, and we had moved forward. As a background to this, staff attended regular meetings at Muskoka Emergency Response Committee, which is a committee that we are a part of with our other counterparts in the municipal emergency management area for the district. And it was decided after budget was approved, staff indicated to this MERC that the Township of Muskoka Lake was intending to purchase a system called Code Red, an emergency mass notification system. Interest was expressed by our partners to use such a system on a district-wide basis. Benefits of a universal adoption for this would have been very evident to council and was evident to staff at the time for unified messaging and communications with all of our residents. After further analysis by the group, the Code Red platform was involved in that analysis, and it was found that the data was stored on servers located in the United States of America, an oversight that we had forgot to look into when we originally evaluated the product. As a result, the MERC group considered and endorsed a product called the Voyant Alert Notification Platform. And I will note anecdotally that they had a better price this time around when there was more of us involved. The district then decided all the lower tier municipalities will benefit from the district paying for the product moving forward. Training sessions on the Voyant Alert application have occurred for the Township Emergency Control Group members, and they are also going to have a test later on this week. You can see a schedule that is illustrated in the report. By the end of this week, we will have one test for all the Emergency Control Group members, and most of those members will have the app downloaded onto their phone. After that, we will have we will actually have all our hazard messaging unified as a district next week. And then March 22 is a launch to go live, and the public will begin to be able to download the application as a part of the messaging that comes with the Freshette updates and awareness. Currently, the budget includes $3,500 per year. However, the district is in the middle of their budget approval, and as they approve their budget, we expect that that amount will go to zero because they will then pay for the application moving forward. And I stand ready for questions.
Good, thank you. Commentary, thank you for that presentation, excellent. Councillor Jaglowitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Fire Chief. Certainly, I'm all supported in working together with our other municipal partners, but I wonder if you could provide the following information, maybe not today, but at a later date if you don't have it. I'm just curious, I guess the cost, wondering what the cost to the township would have been if we went on our own, and then what is the total cost to the district if they do it as a group? Do you have that information, or is that difficult?
The total cost to the district group, I can tell you, is $4,000. In our first evaluation, when we analyzed the product, I believe it was $9,000. So by adding more people in the mix, what we added for Voyant Alert was the capture of a better testimonial, if you call it that, for this whole region. And they basically dropped their cost of the application. Another thing that happened when we first costed the application, they had not yet secured better arrangements with some of the telcos that they involved themselves with to get the messaging fee included. So those two things allowed for them to have a better cost the second time around. And that's why that part of that is why we went with them. The other part was predominantly around the data management piece. Data that is private in nature must be stored only on Canadian servers. So that wasn't included in our first analysis.
Supplementary.
Sure.
Just for clarification, are you saying the total cost to the district, which includes all the municipalities, is only $4,000? Did I understand? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Mazan, go ahead. Then we'll have a break.
Thank you, and through you. I'm not sure this is really a question or a comment, but I'm looking ahead to the schedule on March 22nd. Perhaps one of the first Voyant alerts that gets sent out is to talk about the spring freshet. And I'm just picking up on the conversation had earlier. Is this message going to be something sent from the district and out? In which case, what I'm hearing is that the conditions might be different by municipality. I would just hate for a message to be sent out on the first communication piece we have using this new system, be something that we just want to be very careful and make sure that our communication there is what is reflective of what this township would want to be heard. It just seems like a little bit of a disconnect there.
Good, thank you. Yeah,
So I don't know.
What I'm hearing you say is the word alert could cause some.
Well, it's the first time we're sending out an alert. We just said we don't want to get, we're not concerned. We don't want to. So again, I don't know if it's a question and or a comment or I'm red flagging this one to be sure that we get our voice, especially if it's coming from the district too. Their message is different.
Good, fair enough. Chief Morrell, you want to speak? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I may have misinformed the committee. So let me explain. There are 6 municipalities. Each municipality has their own emergency control group that can control the alerts that capture within their region. On top of that, we also have the district that has their emergency control group that can send out messaging as well. what we're talking about doing on the 22nd is sending out a public alert to the public, not an alert, just a message to the public that they can download the application and start to be involved in the ability to get the alert on a regular basis.
Okay.
So what that is, it's not an alert, it's a message through our communications. So our memo that says Fresh Air is sitting at this, please download this application to keep tabs on emergencies that occur in the District of Muskoka, including the municipality of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I hope that's clear.
It is. It is. Thank you. I see the CAO has his finger up, and also Councillor Edwards has a comment. So CAO, do you have more to add to what the chief just said? You're muted. Sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. Just a minor comment further to Chief Farrell's comments. In order to receive messages on the app, you have to have had it downloaded onto your phone going forward. So the first communication is more of an advisory that we have that tool available to the public, to those who wish to avail themselves to it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Edwards, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this. I know we have the training on Friday, which should be good. But already on the internet, there's some negative and that comments on the system. Is it actually regarding people's privacy or what? I know when you fill it out, you put your home address in and everything else like that. But are the concerns justified? Because they're warning people not to download the app, which would hurt. And I think we have to get the message out. This is for the good of the people.
Good question.
Thank you.
Good thought. Chief Morrell?
So we were, when we were going through our training, this question came up and we asked some repeat questions around it. So in order for you to receive an alert that affects you geographically in an area, you have to have your location services turned on. Should you not turn them on, what you could do is drop a pin on those sites that are of interest to you, and you will get an alert based on that. So you can turn your location services off and still get alerts for locations that you're interested in. So should you own a cottage in Bala and you own your primary residence is Windermere, you could have a drop dot on both of those locations. Should you have a child in school over at Macaulay School, and maybe you have somebody attending university courses in Bracebridge, you could drop dots on those locations. So should an event occur, what would happen is you'll receive an alert, and the alert is intelligent in that it will say there is and I'll just use an example, there is an emergency occurring within this amount of distance from interest point that you have identified on your alert tool. So you can run in an unidentified fashion with the alert tool. That said, if you have your location services turned on and you're visiting an area and you aren't a member of that area and Voyant Alert works in that area, you will actually get because your location services are turned on, you'll actually get an alert for that area. So that is why Voyant Alert is expanding in its usefulness, is because people are using it more and more as their children are going to post-secondary education. That's actually one of the reasons that this tool was invented, was because of active shooter situations in the United States, and because more and more emergencies and less municipalities are maintaining the use of the old siren system, the old air raid siren system that was in a lot of places in those municipalities. Hopefully that answers your question. I will look into it a little deeper if you'd like, Councillor, and bring it back to committee about the privacy concerns, but that was what was told to us in our training.
Good, thank you. It sounds like, again, continuous improvement in this township, and so I appreciate all these updates. And I see no other communications, no other hands up. So I'm going to call a quick break till, let's say, 10 to 11. If I could, perhaps, but that's about 10 minutes. So if we could all come back at 10:50, take a bit of a break, grab a coffee, whatever, and then we'll see you back here in just a few moments. Okay, thank you. Okay, is everyone good? Good. Okay. We're going to press on now. Item 8A, Economic Development and Grants, accepting onto the record the minutes of the meeting held on November 25th, 2020. Thank you for that. I'm going to move to item 9A, which is unfinished category. We have a report from the mayor on district municipal modernization and his involvement in that committee and what that committee has extrapolated to date and sort of a process and status update. So Mayor, go ahead, you have the floor.
Sure, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. The bottom line is we are considering a couple of recommendations at council. On Monday, there's also a modernization meeting at 10 a.m. Monday morning, and staff were sent back to try and find a method that would trigger weighted voting should equal councillor representation be applied from each lower tier. So Monday, we've got a modernization meeting at 10. At 1 o'clock, district council will weigh in, at which point then lower tiers will have an opportunity to weigh in. And that's the quick update.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Any comments or questions of the mayor in that regard? Okay, seeing none, thank you for that, that report. So that's item 9A. Sorry?
Pardon?
Oh, go ahead. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. It's a little disturbing that they're going with weighted voting. And I hope our council will keep going with equalization voting. I did a little bit of research on it. And there's a big savings, they say. They'll save $91,100 if they cut the 4 jobs. That works out to about 32 cents on $100,000 or $3.27 saved on $1 million on that property. And you're going to lose 4 pair of eyes looking into that. I really think that if they're going to talk about modernization, they should be looking at it district-wide as well, not just the councillors and cutting seats and that, because with the weighted voting, we'd still lose 13 to 11 instead of 12 to 10. So there's no advantage to it whatsoever. And then work on it and get it done in the next 8 years. But I want council just to think about that. At the time, our recommendation was equalization. We'd be losing 1, and that from our council. But there's not a great cost savings in it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would give the mayor a chance to perhaps an opportunity if there's any further comment before I call on Councillor Kelly. Mayor, if you'd like to speak to that or not, that's fine.
The fundamental reality is we have 22 councillors today. The way the voting works, technically, to Councillor's point, we are outvoted towns versus townships. The concept of equality around the table is what we exercise in our committee meetings, and we are trying to push that forward. There may be a hybrid approach. If everything fails, and I just will remind our council this, if everything fails going forward, we are with the exact same system. So we are no further ahead. And we can dig in our feet and ask for something. And if that fails, again, we are no further ahead. So there are baby steps to modernization. And we'll let district council weigh in, and then we can bring it back on our own. I think that's the, let's see where district council goes.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, and we're not here to renegotiate, relitigate, or anything else on this issue, but I will tell you, I don't have a comment on the size of district council, but the weighted voting thing frightens me simply because after 50 years, we can't really understand what our relative weight should be given our inability to count heads among seasonal residents. So weighted voting only works if we really have a handle on that. I don't know how we're going to get a handle on that. I've heard no discussion in watching every minute of these district modernization committee meetings. I've never heard anybody really address the inadequacy or the inability to keep track of how we're going to record population on a seasonal resident basis. My other thought, and it's just a thought, Your Worship, you mentioned that if we do nothing, we get no further ahead. At some point in time, I believe doing nothing might have to be the consequence of what really does not show well. The work on this committee and the surprises and the twists and the turns don't look good. And quite frankly, at some point in time, I think somebody might decide fairly and honestly that we can't take this thing any further on our own. And other than the fact that we haven't advanced our cause as a township and made things any better, we haven't made them any worse either. And simply going back to the minister and the premier and saying, we've given it a fair shot, we've debated it 6 ways to Sunday, but we really have no possible opportunity to reach consensus on this issue and give you direction on how we think this moves ahead. I mean, I hate giving in like that, but at some point in time, I think that's a better option than the sort of the challenging circumstances that you and the other committee members are under when they're on public display having these kinds of discussions every other week. It's at some point in time, you must and others must be thinking, this is it, we can't take this thing any further. There doesn't seem to be any movement. Anyhow, that's my feedback, my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts has his hand up.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I couldn't have said it any better than what my peer, Councillor Kelly, had just communicated. In business, we would often be faced with a dilemma that we couldn't agree, and the rule was once a round and up. We are here at the pleasure of the Ontario government. So if we've done our best and we've overturned every rock, and discussed every option, then we need to pass it up to the board of directors, our board of directors, which is the provincial government. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. I suppose next week will be an interesting viewing, both at the Modernization Committee meeting pre the council meeting. I think that will be a very interesting and very telling place to get a status update as to where this thing is going to go. And so thank you for your attendance to that, Mayor, and hopefully you take our, the comments to heart and factor that into the negotiations that you find yourself in. So that is that. 9A, thank you. Under unfinished business, is there any other unfinished business before we move on to item 10? Oh, sorry, so the Mayor, go ahead, and then Councillor Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment. If any individual councillor would like to know sort of some deeper dive, if you will, into modernization, I'm happy. Please feel free to reach out over the weekend in advance of Monday. But I will do that on a one-on-one basis. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that offer. Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
Thank you.
This is under unfinished business. Go ahead.
Under unfinished business. Thank you, Chair. Council will recall that back in January 2019, we at council debated and discussed the cannabis retail within Muskoka Lakes. Now, after 2 years, I think it is time that maybe that I propose that council reconsider our position of January 2019 and ask staff to come back to the next the next general finance meeting, I believe, to reconsider our decision on January 2019. There's been a lot of information data gathering in the last 2 years, so I think we're in a more informed position to reconsider our decision of January 29th. So I'm asking for council today or committee to consider that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Do we have anyone here on committee who would support the councillor on that? Okay, we have Councillor Haines, Councillor Nishikawa. I certainly would. I'm going to ask the clerk, do we need, if I could, Clerk Mortimer, do we need some sort of a 2/3 majority to have this topic back onto the agenda for next month? Or can we, through Councillor Roberts, simply ask staff for a report for next month's April General Finance Committee on this issue?
We would need a consensus of committee, so we would need 6 of the 10 to ask for that to be brought back.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that. So I would ask committee, I suppose a nodding of heads or a show of hands, those on this committee who would want to reconsider, essentially just ask for a staff report in the reconsideration of our opting out at this point in time of the cannabis retail scenario. So I guess I would ask a show of hands to for those who would wish to reconsider. I might just do that. And if I could, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Cheryl. So we're.
Councillor Zavitz, excuse me, but I was trying to ask a question before
sorry.
voting.
I'm sorry. Please proceed.
Because I agree with the concept, but I'm not sure with our staff being overworked if asking for a 1-month comeback is that's my only thing. Can we maybe make it a little less prescriptive in that manner? I just know how hard they're all working. But I agree with the concept. So I just wanted to get that in before the vote because it looked to me like it was coming back next month.
Good, thank you. And that's a great question. I might defer to the CAO on that, if it's possible. Derek, Mr. Hammond, if you might opine on that. Is that a possibility, or should we relax that by a month? Or
Mr. Chairman, I think if rather than a level of prescription next month, if you could, committee would indulge us to for me to investigate with the appropriate department head and likely within the next couple of months, we'll try and get it back on as soon as we can. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And does that seem to suit committee? I sort of see a nodding of heads. I'm sensing that is a way forward that we would be comfortable with. So in that regard, please do. I suppose, Cheryl, do we need something more formal, or is that on the record? Staff would come back within the next, say, 60 days with some sort of a report, staff report relating to the reconsideration of our current retail cannabis position.
Well, I just need to confirm that Councillor Bridgman was supportive of that because it was.
Okay, might we have
So
just
that's a 6. So I just want to make sure we have 6.
I would be supportive of in the next 3 months. I don't even want to put 60 days on
fair
this.
enough. Fair enough. So.
And then I would be supportive of it. If we could leave it with staff, that it will come back shortly, quote unquote.
I too would be comfortable with that. So I think we have our majority consideration piece. Good. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you for that. Okay, good. And thank you, Councillor Roberts, for bringing that forward. I would ask now item 10A, District Municipality of Muskoka updates. In no particular order, Councillor Jagowitz, if you would have an update for us, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended a lot of meetings this month, but I'm going to restrict my comments to the item that the committee I'm on, which is the Finance Committee, and talk a bit about the district budget. The district budget went through the 4 committees last month. Then it went to a committee of the whole, and it's going to be approved on Monday. Some of the interesting things is the budget guideline was 3%. The original budget came in at 3.41, and now it's sitting at 3.34. That's an 81 million budget. Our share of that is 30 million. But there were a lot of changes to it, the things that might be of interest. For example, in the capital budget, right near the end of our deliberations, the Fairburn capital budget was added to it. And what was added was, there was 2 million in the budget, it's now 51 million, 49 million was added. And the interesting thing is how it's going to be funded. Approximately 5 million is coming from the province. 25 million is coming from the district through its debt reduction reserve. In other words, they're going to borrow from themselves and then pay it back on the tax levy at some future date. The 21 million that the provinces share, the district's being asked to go out and borrow it externally over 25 years, and the province promises to repay that over 25 years. So basically, all but 5 million of the 51 million is coming from the district initially. The next item that may be of interest is that two unusual things happened. I attended all the committee meetings, and Chair Klink actually brought up two suggestions at the health meeting, and I'm not taking away from that, but I'm dealing with the budget items. One was he suggested there was a program called Health Link, which had been funded by the province, which the funding was taken away a year or so ago. And he recommended that program be discontinued at a reduction of about $194,000. That passed unanimously at the committee. And when it got to council rejected that, and it was kept on at a vote around 14-9. The second item that Chair Klink recommended at the Health Committee was that the $600,000 that goes into the health initiatives, which was primarily hospital funding, be discontinued. And his logic was that I'm getting an alert on my phone. I hope our new alert system isn't going to do that. And his suggestion was that money in the past was used for a whole bunch of things. And it would be good to wipe the slate clean so that when the recognizing that we will have a responsibility for the new hospitals, the local share is now estimated at about 75 million, and that we could start over in the negotiations. That again passed unanimously at the committee, but was rejected at the committee of the whole. A couple other just very small things. As you all know, insurance is an issue. The district's insurance increase was pegged at 38%, and this is the second year in a row. And they reduced the deductibles and got it down to 25%. But basically, all the small claims will be self-insured to get it to that. And by the way, that 38%, that represents $1 million. And even though the district hired a full-time person in risk management advisor, that didn't seem to have any impact. The other interesting item was that they're replacing 26 of the 96 vehicles for 1.9 million. And the OPP costs for the district, the actual usage went down 16%. TML's usage went down 34%, but the billing cost went down 0.5%. So volume doesn't seem to affect that. And I guess the last item I'll mention is there was an item that came up where the district has supported a $175,000 grant to the Muskoka Discovery Center for a permanent exhibit about Indigenous cultures in Muskoka. So that's my report. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, sir. I would call on Councillor, seeing no questions of Councillor Jaglowitz, I'll call on Councillor Nishikawa for her comment, for her report.
Councillor Jaglowitz brought forward my report. Thanks. I would just suggest if you wanted to go through the budget document for health services, it's online, but otherwise it's already been brought forward.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. It'll be fairly short as well. With the housing, there was what they call a head lease overview and that, and we went through that. We've passed it to have it come back to the committee. Basically, and that what it does, just a minute. It's for the 10-year homelessness plan. And one of the actions was other housing models. So what they do is they have somebody build it, and maybe on district land and that, and then it's handled that way. There was some and that pushback on that, but we'll just see what happens when it comes forward again. And the affordable housing, they identified the modernization funding and that to the capital budget. Just trying to get there. And what they're doing is they're going to the chief administration officer and the commissioner of planning be delegated the authority to execute a contract to a maximum of $125,000 to come up with shovel-ready attainable housing. As probably everyone knows, the eviction enforcement pause, and that, so they're not going to be taking people and putting them out on the street during the pandemic. And other than that, there was some subdivisions, one in Gravenhurst, and the one in Gravenhurst, and what they're doing with that one, I have voiced opposition to it, but is these houses will be built and they'll have booster pumps in them. So it's just like having a well pump in your house to boost the pressure. And I think it's very short-sighted, but this is what they've passed. So it's just something. So I have talked to somebody in Bracebridge, and their neighbors have already, within 9 months, replaced 2 of these pumps, and they've replaced 1. And it comes on it. So I think the district should be looking at that in the future. But anyway, and that is my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I guess I just wanted to add to Alan's comments. You'd have a real struggle in Bala because most of that is on a booster pump system. It's not something that the district hasn't been doing for many, many years. So I'm just saying, because I was very involved when we had a system shutdown and leaking into Long Lake many years ago. But anyhow, I'm not saying this is argumentative, but it is the reality of what we have in Muskoka.
Could I ask Councilor Nishikawa a question? So this is a booster pump in each house or on the system?
And so some blocks have it in each house, some of it have it in the system. So
yeah, because like I
could
say,
talk about the bottom of Portage Street, for instance, and I could talk about Windsor Drive.
Yeah.
They
no, it's fine.
Have booster pump systems, and some of them are in the house and some aren't. So again, it's one of our challenges with our geography, really, with granite. So there you go. I wouldn't want to put out a message that people should be concerned about this, because in reality, they may not have any other option.
Well, the district actually could increase the pressure in that by putting the central in that booster pump system, and like other municipalities have, and not put it on the homeowner themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On the record. Thank you for that. I'm going to allow now next Mayor Harding, your comments on the district, your involvement, sir.
Thank you. Had a couple meetings, February 17th, update regarding our Rose Warren landfill. We're starting to send out tenders for cell 3. Bottom line is we need to find greater diversion measures for that. Councillor Jagos talked about our tax supported budget. I'll leave it there. We did have a verbal update about the water main break in Bracebridge that shut down the water system up there. The district's hired a third-party consultant that will be doing a deep dive into the emergency and provide recommendations going forward that should come back to committee in April. We also had a special meeting on February 25th regarding our snowmobile access in Port Carling, and basically trying to get a district-wide approach. If they're prohibited on that section of road, it's a carryover from the MTO download. But we will solve the problem in the next 6 months on a district-wide basis for all of our roads. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Councillor Roberts has his hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the mayor in his role as on Public Works Committee. Is there any update on the situation with the 90+ dumpsters that are going to, that need to be addressed?
It's a continuing moving target, if you will. Is a new report. We're not having any significant changes in Muskoka Lakes for summer of 2021. Same service levels will be provided as we did with the rolling garbage truck last year. So everybody's fine that way. Any significant changes, I'll be happy to advise.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item 10B. That concludes district information. Item 10B is community events and updates. Are there any comments from anyone as it relates to our communities that we'd want to update on? Anyone? I see none. Okay, thank you. Item 10C. Now, this is a new one. This is, and for the public watching, certainly we as a township receive many pieces of correspondence through the days, weeks, and months. Different townships, different municipal organizations asking for our input and or support, as I think you saw one earlier on the Fire College in Gravenhurst and how that might affect us as well. So certainly there are some 32 items on your agenda in this category, item 10C. And what I'll do, because some of these items touch each other, touch one of us more than another, and or not at all, or we may want to talk about them. I don't know that we want to talk about all 32 individually, but certainly that's for this first round. We'll give that a try. And I'm just going to go down the list, a very fundamental item, item 1, Perth County relating to correspondence to the Premier on current value assessments in Perth County. So from there on, do we have, is there any councillors that have seen something in amongst here? There will definitely be one, which is item 29 that will be, I'm sure we'll be having some discussion on. But other than that, is there any one item or 2 or 3 items? I see the mayor has his hand. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much. The purpose of this, just so committee is aware, we regularly throughout the month would get forwarded emails and resolution from all the different townships and towns across the province. As noted, there's over 31 of them in this particular time, and items of correspondence. It's a catch-all. If there's something that a councillor or 2 councillors really want to come forward with or to move forward and potentially push forward to recirculate, they could be requesting that when it comes out on the agenda, and that the clerk would then be able to be signified. It basically just cleans up our own emails so that we're not getting every day another one from somebody else. So I hope we don't go through anyone individually in all 31 of these in individual form. And again, if somebody wants to talk about what you've already alluded to, item 29, I'm happy to do so.
Good, thank you for that preface. I have hands, Councillor Roberts and then Councillor Haines.
Yes, thank you. Yes, in item 29, I'm very interested in, but at the I also in the insurance premiums and issues that that many municipalities are raising. I'm wondering if we should support the proposals that we asked the Ontario government to investigate. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Councillor Haines, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Gord number 27 and 22, which talk to an investigation and the regarding joint and several liability insurance should both be looked at. Also, I'd like to just comment on number 28, which is the climate change and Minister of Agriculture putting an application of carbon tax on primary agricultural users. I don't know if this is going to affect anybody in our area, but we do have farmers, and right now it's very difficult for them. So putting a carbon tax on it is kind of, I don't know why we do it at this time, but I just wondered if anyone else had any thoughts on that.
Okay, anyone? To Councillor's question? No? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to, well, I don't want to dismiss any of these. So I guess to your points, before I move to Councillor Mazan, items 22 and 27, Clerk, is this something that we would bring forward for next month? I mean, in terms of the timing, or would we support? We can't certainly support these here and now because we don't even have a resolution to that effect. So I'm wondering if you could provide some direction on that so that we capture these items 22 and 27.
So I would need councilors to indicate to me as a mover and a seconder, and that they would come to the next council meeting for enactment.
Okay, good. So then I would proceed with that on items 22 and 27. Do you want to do? We could do it in aggregate, or no? We probably shouldn't. So CAO, I'm going to reach out to you, and then the mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would note to committee that previously the municipality has provided comments to the province on joint and several liability. You may recall in 2019 they were undertaking a review of the insurance matter, and I've reported previously that my understanding is that all comments were due by October of 2019, and then of course we had COVID hit in early 2020, so the results of that review have obviously not trickled out yet, or my understanding, I'm not sure if it's been completed, but I think what you're seeing is we were ahead of the curve with respect to our insurance renewal, so we provided that input through a staff report at that time. What you're seeing now is different municipalities, as Councillor Jaglowitz has indicated with the district, they're now getting their renewals. They're seeing the increase in the cost, so that's why you're seeing these resolutions. So should you wish to provide additional comments or support those resolutions, certainly that's something that staff are in your hands with respect to. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Mayor, would you?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's just as the CIO Hammond commented on, and the clerk also. The idea of these is to flag the public the information that's come into us. It's also for us to spark conversations, not necessarily in this committee, but if a councillor sees something on here, they can reach out. If there's a second councillor that they want to support a motion, I would suggest that it's of interest that you would move it forward, have a conversation with our clerk and our CIO, and the CIO may offer some greater background, as he just did, on what we've talked about in the past. So for insurance purposes, example, and then determine whether or not we want to put it on a council agenda next month. Again, it's not for our General and Finance Committee to have debate on 31 items.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Certainly, Councillor Bridgman, you were waving your hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we had already done something about the, I think, to CAO's comment. That was all I wanted to say.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to call on Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, probably getting to the one line item that I think most of us are interested in hearing a bit more on, and that is number 29, the letter from the Minister of Natural Resources and Forest Correspondence. And I'm just wondering, not to put the mayor on the spot, but you have offered once or twice, if you might be able to provide us with the next steps and action plan based upon this minister's response to March the 2nd to the mayor's letter of January 22nd. Maybe I could just ask that question. Next steps and action plan. Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you. Just, I guess, some background. Back in the fall, I had a meeting with, and council is well aware, with the Premier, Minister Yakubuski, Minister Urick, and we discussed all things Muskoka watershed. We then had a communications meeting with the MNRF. A couple weeks later, it seemed that the two meetings did not jive, was a little bit frustrated. My fellow mayors and Reeves across the Muskoka River Water Management Plan were all somewhat disappointed in the initial communications meeting as to what was happening. And the other thing that was noted by Minister Yakubuski was that we needed to be very specific in our asks of the province on amendments to the MRWMP. The letter that was circulated to you all yesterday, dated January 22nd, was that letter. There were some specific asks in there. The response that we received on March 2nd, what was the date? Yes, I guess it was March 2nd.
Yes.
From Minister Yakubuski. Though he acknowledged the letter, he really didn't, he posed another question. And he kind of set us up saying, oh, well, if you want us to go lower than the levels, then are you all in agreement? Well, all the mayors were in agreement with some very specific asks. And I think the one that the province has followed through with right now is ask number 4, and that's an evaluation of and consideration of moving a target operating line to a halfway point between the bottom of the normal operating zone and the target operating line. That is where Lake Muskoka is at. That's what they've been operating to, generally speaking, though not necessarily prescribed in this particular case, probably more so because of snowpack. Would I suggest that the ministry go and lower the normal operating zone without input? Not a chance. So the minister has kind of set us up here saying, oh, well, you want more, you go further. At this particular point, I think the next steps are going to be a letter back from myself and my fellow mayors and Reeves, who were on the original letter, saying, we didn't ask for you to go below the normal operating zone. We did ask for consideration and a report to understanding the pros and cons. Us sitting with a general water level plan, there's a reason there's a range in the plan, and that is to accommodate for specific snow loads and water content. The one thing I will say that has happened in 2021 is the MNRF are paying attention. They are listening because of our monthly meetings with them. They are certainly managing the water levels, in my opinion, far better than they have in the past. And they're reporting it because they have greater oversight. And I think that is really what's happening. So regarding Minister Yakubuski's letter to myself and our fellow mayors, we will be issuing a response just saying, you know, we really didn't ask for what you're suggesting. Go back to the specifics of our ask and see where we're at on that particular status. So I think that's all that this means at this particular point. And there's no huge sense of urgency because we didn't ask for it to be lowered below the normal operating zone. Hope that answers your question. And we'll be responding in the next 30, 60 days.
Good, thank you. Councilor Wazan, does that work for you? Good, thank you. And I certainly want to just be on the record as well. This is all I've ever asked of you, Mayor, is to engage and be involved. And you certainly have been. And I thank you for that. The correspondence that I've read back and forth that is here on the public record now, that people can get right on there and read it back and forth, shows dialogue, shows, you know, that there's I wouldn't want to call it negotiation, but certainly I feel my spirits are buoyed by the fact that, to your point, I think they're paying more attention. And I think that's a great byproduct of a further, as you move this thing down the road. So thank you for that. Any other comments from committee on that particular topic, which is a huge one? Okay, good, thank you. Now, as it relates to the 32 items, I think we've probably come to terms with that in terms of what we can hope from that. I'm going to move on to adjournment if I don't have any other concerns or comments. Anything else? No? Good. Okay. Councillor Edwards, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. It's on the vaccines and that I've had calls, and I'm sure other ones have, and that people over 85 are phoning in. They're getting their family trying to get them. They've been trying for weeks and they cannot get through. Is there something that can be done in the future that people are more accommodating to the elderly? And that because, like I say, they're getting frustrated. They want to get their shots, and yet they can't seem to get in. They've been calling for days and days. And I was on the website last night. Everything is booked up until the 16th and that, but you know, there should be something, I don't know, even if they hire an answering service to answer the phone, but it must be very, very, and that harmful for them phoning day after day and not getting through. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And to that end as well, one only needs to listen to Moose FM, and they're announcing people 60 to 64 should start to, as of I think it's Friday, start to reach out and try to get a commitment. So is there someone here that can speak to that? And again, I might go to the CAO, not to put you on the spot, sir, but is there a, you know, I mean, is there a cautious note? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to speak to that, but I understand Councillor Nishikawa wishes to speak first, so I'll let her go ahead. She may have information through the Health Services Committee at the district.
Good, thank you. I'm not seeing things light up here. So, okay,
These-
sorry.
These
Councillor
types of questions should be directed to the health, Muskoka Simcoe Health Unit. We don't have any
right
control at all about the wait lists and things. And it's interesting, I've been involved with a number of seniors, both with McVitie Place and another senior resident home. And while some were getting confused about, you know, what button to push, I'll say something like that in that matter, it was easily rectified. But the health unit has additional help available. And that's why it's important for counselors to, if you want to assist, you need to contact the health unit. It's not anything that the district can do. From what I've learned, Derek may have something more to add, but it is suggested that you contact the health unit.
Good, thank you for that. CAO, would you have any sort of last comment, if you would?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. That's consistent with my understanding as well through online bookings / telephone. I do attend a weekly telephone conference with the health unit officials and the other CAOs in Simcoe Muskoka, so I can follow up through that venue as to if they're running into any problems and what they're doing to address them, and I'm happy to follow up through email with members of council. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay, good. I see no other hands. I'm going to read a resolution moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 11:34. Let's call it 11:35 a.m. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on April 14th, 2021 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Good, thank you, committee. That's carried. We'll see you this afternoon.